In this video, you will learn my two-step process to add more capacity to your memory. After teaching over 200,000 students how to increase their memories in my online courses, I'm excited for you to be the next. I'm Jonathan Levy, the founder of Super Learner Academy, the place where top performers go to learn how to increase their memory capacity, read faster, and live life to its fullest potential. Today, you are going to learn all about your memory, along with the secrets that world memory champions use to perform astonishing feats of memory. Make sure to smash that subscribe button and the bell icon below so that you don't miss out on any more future videos. Keep watching. Unlike adding more hours to the day, you can add more capacity to your memory. However, in order to do so, there are a few key fundamentals you must understand. First, you have to understand that there is no such thing as plain and simple memory. As a whole, people understand very little about what their memory is, how it works, and why. And can you blame them? We are all the product of a school system that spends a full year teaching us how to calculate the angle of a line tangent to a circle, but never once stops to teach us about the 10-pound mass of fat that we're supposedly there to enrich. And I mean your brain. When we set out on the task of improving our memories, it's important to make a few key distinctions. First, we must understand that our memory can actually be categorized into three rough categories: working memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Of course, there are different types of memories as well, from episodic to autobiographical memory, spatial memory, semantic memory, and even procedural memory. But none of that is actually of any importance to us right now. What you need to understand is that there's no such thing as plain and simple memory. In fact, memory is actually an extremely complex thing, and one that neuroscientists and psychologists still don't completely understand. Fortunately, we don't actually need to understand all the neuroscience behind memory to improve it. If that were true, even I would probably be walking around saying that I have a lousy memory. So what are the differences between working, short-term, and long-term memory? Well, first off, we have working memory. And as the name would suggest, working memory is really only used while you're working with and processing information. Think of it as your brain's scratch paper. When you listen to a sentence like this one and remember how the sentence started long enough to connect it to the end of the sentence, well, that's working memory. See, you just used your working memory, and so did I while speaking this very sentence. Next, we have short-term memory, which is quite possibly the most confused type of memory of all. Most people would guess that short-term memory lasts for minutes or even hours, but in reality, most of the research shows us that this type of memory lasts between 15 and 30 seconds. In that way, you can think of it kind of like a buffer in your computer. When you learn something new, short-term memory brings it up in your brain before the rest of your brain decides what to do with it. Sort of. I'm oversimplifying things. Furthermore, if you've ever heard that we can memorize 7 plus or minus 2 objects, by the way, it's actually 4 plus or minus 1 in our memory, that refers to our short-term memory. Finally, we have long-term memory. Once again, there's a lot of confusion here, most likely because of the name. While 1 minute may not seem like a long time, in fact, this is the domain of long-term memory. This category of memory is incredibly broad, covering the span from 1 minute to 1 century and everything in between. Once again, there are many different types of long-term memory, but suffice it to say that if it's something stored permanently or semi-permanently, that's your long-term memory at play. Was that surprising to you? Go ahead and slam that like button if you learned something new. I would really appreciate to know. Now that we understand the difference between the different kinds of memories, let's proceed and ask, can you really improve your short-term memory? In a word, not really. But before you get all disappointed and leave, don't worry. This isn't because you can't improve your memory overall. Quite the contrary, you can easily 10x your memory in just a few short weeks. Unless you're suffering from Alzheimer's or some other form of brain damage, nearly any and all memory improvement that you'll undertake will likely improve your long-term memory. Indeed, perhaps one of the main reasons people wish to improve short-term memory as opposed to other forms of memory is just a misunderstanding of the breakdown. In fact, for my money, I think that improving the long-term memory is a far better investment. After all, imagine remembering 80% of every book you read, a skill that I teach my students in my Superlearner course. Sure, there are a few things that you can actually do to improve your short-term memory, but on the whole, you already know them all. Get more sleep, exercise, meditate, eat a healthy diet with minimal sugar. In truth, each of these things will improve your short-term memory, but only by virtue of the fact that they'll improve your overall cognitive health. Assuming you're already doing all that, let me start then by explaining that improving your short-term memory is actually not so much a matter of training your memory itself. Sure, you can make a daily habit of remembering longer and longer strings of information, and that will probably improve your short-term memory, at least temporarily. However, if you really want to see dramatic improvements, you need to relearn how to use your memory, a skill that humanity forgot with the advent of ink and buried with the advent of computers and Google. I mean, think about it. When was the last time you used your memory? So how can we relearn how to use our memories? Well, to begin, you must understand the importance of visual memory. Thousands of years ago, the Greeks valued short and long-term memory as the noblest of pursuits and skills. In fact, it was hundreds of years before such classics as Homer's The Odyssey or the Iliad were ever committed to writing. This means that someone actually memorized these massive stories and passed them on for generations. The Greeks didn't do this with some magical herb or root. They didn't do it solely by training their memories like you train your muscles. They did it because they were masters of mnemonics, or memory techniques. You've probably encountered mnemonic devices in the past if you've used acronyms like PEMDAS or songs to improve short-term memory. These are certainly helpful, but they're not nearly as effective as visual memory. In my course, I explain that our brains are evolved to place a high emphasis on more life and death information. They often say that smell and taste, which are related senses, are the most memorable of senses, and this is likely true. But why? Well, first off, they are hardwired into the reptilian brain, and they developed way before our other senses. But second, it's a simple evolutionary advantage. Imagine two Paleolithic men or women, one who can remember the smell and taste of a poisonous berry that almost killed him last time he ate it, and one who cannot, who survives and passes on their genes to you. The same is true of visual memory. Remembering what those berries look like is definitely an evolutionary advantage. However, sound is not nearly as important in life and death situations. I mean, how many predators are going to announce their arrival? Another thing that our brains are wired to remember is locations. This is because for millions of years, our survival depended on our ability to remember where our tribe was for safety and shelter and where our food and water supply were. A Neanderthal who can't remember geographically where the freshwater source or the non-poisonous berry tree, well, they're not going to stick around very long, at least not long enough to pass their genes. This simple evolutionary hand-down is why you remember where the furniture was in every single apartment you've ever lived in, and why you can probably tell me how many soap and shampoo bottles are in your shower and where they are right now. Visual and spatial memory are really, really powerful, and they come as part of the standard software of your brain. And so coming back from a long tangent, it's important to understand that improving short-term memory is more about utilizing your brain the way it's designed to be used than anything else. It's about setting things up in your short-term memory in a way that effectively and memorably funnels them into your long-term memory. But let's face it, Your brain wasn't designed to memorize strings of numbers by repeating them over and over and over. It was designed to formulate and remember pictures and be able to spatially map them out with ease. So give it what it wants. This is why literally all of the world's top-ranking memory athletes at the World Memory Championships use visual memory, and why all of them use a technique called the method of loci, or memory palaces. The basic idea here is that you create images or symbols for anything you want to remember, converting 8 into a picture of a racetrack, for example, and store it in an imaginary house in one of your storage points. From there, you just have to walk through your old house or office, building, and imagine finding the clues as you remember each item. This is probably where the term "a stroll down memory lane" originated. At the most advanced levels, memory athletes have created chunking and compression techniques and have taken the memory palace to its logical extreme, walking through entire cities to memorize the landscape and assembling hundreds and hundreds of buildings with tens of thousands of loci or storage points for storing their memories. If you want to discover some of these more advanced techniques, make sure to check out the resources in the description below, where I have the links to other videos that I've created, books I recommend, and important courses on advanced memory techniques. Using these techniques, memory athletes are able to dramatically improve short-term memory by blurring the lines between what is short-term and what is long-term. If you've ever used the memory palace technique, you know that it can actually be a very big challenge to remove your memories and make room for new ones. You know, every time I perform a feat such as memorizing 50 random digits, my biggest challenge isn't remembering the digits per se. It's actually forgetting the memorized digits from the last time I used that specific memory palace. Pretty powerful. So this is good and bad news. The bad news is that you can't really improve your short-term memory beyond the basic stuff like sleep and nutrition, but rather that you need to make it into a more efficient funnel for your long-term memory. In order to do that, it takes a bit of work. You need to relearn how you learn and learn the systems for converting all new information, whether it's Russian vocabulary, people's names, or your credit card number, into detailed visual symbols. The next step, once you improve short-term memory, is to work on your long-term memory. This is where the memory palaces and other techniques of linking memories together come into play. But that, of course, is another topic for another day. Thanks for watching. As you may remember from the beginning, I promised that I'd give you access to one of my courses on memory training. So make sure you claim your code by clicking the link in the description below. I will see you next time.